Japan, 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 Japan. What the? Hello everyone. It's been about a year since I've moved here, so let's talk about living in Japan. Well, of course, just like living anywhere else in the world, there's good, bad, and mediocre. But let's first talk about the bad. Have you ever heard of key money? Well, let's play a little game real quick. Which one do you think is more expensive up front? This used car or this Japanese apartment? Well, if you guessed car, then you are absolutely wrong. You see, Japan has something called key money. It's kind of like a security deposit, except you don't get this money back, and in most cases it's more expensive, so really it's a downgrade in every way possible. This deposit is typically between 1 to 3 months rent up front, but how much it costs you depends on where you end up renting. Some places nowadays even have zero key money fees, but I haven't gotten to experience that yet. It cost me about 2,000 USD to start renting my apartment here. And yes, in case you were wondering, my rent is pretty cheap. This is the equivalent to almost 4 months of my rent up front. This isn't some sort of pay your rent up front fee either, where you don't have to pay rent for the next few months. This is just money you give to the landlord and it's gone. And that's not to mention that you have to find a place to rent here first. As a foreigner living in Japan, you're going to get declined a lot when you try to find a place to live. Luckily, there are some sites now dedicated to helping foreigners find housing, but your options are going to be more limited and honestly probably more expensive. And really there's nothing you can do about this situation either, you just have to search around and get lucky. So,
good luck.
But it's not all bad, and I don't want to sound like I'm painting Japan in a bad light because I really do like living here. If you like the outdoors, then living in Japan is absolutely like a dream. I think Japan ranks like 11th in how many World Heritage Sites it has, all packed into a country the size of the state of California. So yeah, there's a lot to see here. And speaking of a dream, there really is some sort of magic to living here in Japan. You might hear others talk about this, but really not know how to describe it that well. And it is difficult to put your finger on, but I'll try to give it a shot. You see, in America, I took my car everywhere. It didn't matter where. Groceries, haircuts, strip clubs. I was always taking my car. And I think what happened was that I was never really experiencing the things that were happening around me. And that's because, well, I was stuck in a box on the highway for most of the time. But Japan is all about walking or taking public transportation. So most of the time you're forced to be on the ground and you kind of have to take in all of your surroundings. But this makes you really appreciate all of the little things. I see kids catching bugs with their nets or practicing their batting swings, playing in parks. A warm breeze will hit you as you watch the sunset after you grab konbini chicken on the way home. It's just the little things that I've really come to appreciate and make living here feel really special. Hey Japan, come here. You know, what is this? What is this? Is that bad work-life balance? It's not very good, is it? You've probably heard it once, maybe even twice, that Japan's work culture can be pretty bad. But I do want to say that I think it's getting a little better, but it's still a problem. But I don't want to generalize too much, so I'll try to just draw from my own personal experiences. So for those of you that don't know, I actually work in Japan as an assistant language teacher, or ALT. I actually have a lot of things to say about being an ALT in Japan, but I'm gonna save that for another video. The gist of it is that I work with Japanese English teachers at various schools, and I have a typical 9 to 5 schedule. However, my coworkers work way longer hours than I do. Not only do they show up before I do in the morning, but they also leave after I do as well. And this gets even worse during testing periods, where some teachers end up staying until 8, 9, 10 p.m. at night. Sometimes I'll go for an evening run and I'll pass by the school building and see that the lights are still on and there's still teachers working. This sort of thing is wildly reported around Japan and is synonymous with the term Japanese salarymen. Honestly, it's really dangerous to people's health, and it's something that I hope changes in the near future. Drawing from my own experience, sometimes we have college students that want to become teachers come to the school to intern. Well, in Japan, it gets scorching hot with crazy humidity, but Japan has a bit of a dress standard. So even though it's 90 degrees outside and crazy humid, you're still required to wear a suit. Anyways, so these students come to my school and they work these long hours in suits, and keep in mind they're most likely sleep deprived as well from their school plus internship workload, which by the way is a lot. And eventually we had one girl just collapse. So an ambulance had to come get her and take her away to the hospital. So it's pretty bad that everyone has to work with such poor work conditions, and I kind of just watch from the sidelines. In my experience, ALTs aren't really held to the same standard as far as how long you need to stay in the work culture in general. Of course, if you work at a traditional Japanese company, or maybe you work in tech or something like that, then sure, maybe you share some of these nightmares too. But anyways, let's circle back so we can end on a good note. Living here is really affordable. Moving here is really expensive, but the living part is really affordable. For the first time in my life, I'm actually able to live by myself without having to rely on income from other roommates. So it's a very liberating feeling. And some of it is because I don't have a car payment anymore or car insurance. I'd love to see how much money I save every year just by walking everywhere. I'm sure it's a ton. Right now, the flip side to that is that the yen is pretty weak, so traveling anywhere outside of Japan, pretty expensive. But things like going out to restaurants or buying groceries is relatively cheap. I think every month I spend probably about 100 USD on groceries, which I think is pretty good, but I also eat pretty cheap. And as far as everything else you could need, I think Japan has an incredible secondhand market, and there are a lot of ways to access them, whether you like interacting with apps such as Mercury or going in person. And actually, if you find yourself in Tokyo, then I recommend going to a district called Shimokitazawa, which is entirely dedicated to thrift shop clothing. Otherwise, there's another really big chain around Japan called Second Street, which only sells secondhand items. In my experience, everything I've gotten secondhand here has been incredible quality. In fact, I find myself looking for secondhand items before I even bother searching for new items nowadays. But keep in mind that this is Japan, so everything you search for is going to be in Japanese, including the search terms and description of items. So you'll have to navigate around that. Actually, that reminds me, we haven't even talked about the language yet. Hey, Japan, what's going on with this? You want me to memorize, what, 9,000 plus moon runes? What's going on? What do you mean? No, but really, the journey of learning Japanese is a really rewarding experience. But of course, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't extremely difficult and frustrating at some points. But lately it's been getting a little bit easier for me. But it's still a process I'll probably be engaged in for the rest of my life. But anyways, you know what? I think I've been yapping long enough, so I think I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here. Overall, I think living in Japan is great. I really do. I think it's a place that I'll call home for quite a while. Of course, just like living anywhere else in the world, there's ups and there's downs, but at least for me, I think living in Japan has been a net positive. But that's gonna be all for me. I'm gonna go grab some kombini chicken and do Japan things. If you made it this far, then thank you. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff to appease the algorithm overlords. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye.